currently I'm obviously working here as a lecturer, which has been really fantastic last year. I'm moving into a studio space as of tomorrow, a collaborative studio space, so looking to get in an environment with other creatives and kind of push my boundaries with that sort of collaboration, looking to do more workshops and engaging with that sort of creative community as much as I can whilst I'm I think a large part of me clings on to painting because it's something I've always done, but more recently and after the exhibition I held in July this year, I've been kind of questioning whether or not it's important to my practice. And my love for mixed media lets me indulge in that and bring that into digital or drawing or illustrative commercial work. I like to see it more of as just an extra bit of information rather than sticking to one genre particularly. So it's more just like, oh, I feel like painting, so I might paint. Well, I started off, my first degree was in fine arts, so I specialised in painting for that. That was my major when I was studying that. So, like I said, I think it's something that I just sort of cling to a bit. But yeah, I don't know whether it's as relevant to my practice more recently. I'm wondering whether it actually is something that I want to keep doing. But I love painting just for fun. I think it's just, you know, that opportunity to push paint around on a canvas and have that really rich colour and that texture. I think it's just gorgeous. So I have a huge appreciation for people who can paint, but my most recent illustration work is more just like, let's take a snippet of that and add it with this and then change that around and see if it can come up with something new. Definitely feminine. I use a lot of female portraiture, and a friend pointed out to me recently, I think it's a bit of an expression of, you know, maybe putting myself into my work a little bit. Yeah, my girls, they're pretty fierce. Colourful. I love colour. I love using colour. I love harmonious palettes, and I think that kind of links to my love for fashion as well. I love looking at trends and transferring that over. And yeah, I think feminine and colourful will probably be the two biggest ones that have always stood out to me. Too many on me, which is not good for my bank account. Yeah, if I was to go into an art store, I just can't live without finding something. And I couldn't even tell you what it is exactly that I like because I change my mood on my art materials. But I love watercolours, pens. Yeah, I mean, if I am drawing without reference, the first thing I'm likely to draw is probably a long-dressed girl. That seems to be like a recurring thing. I just love drawing line. Like, I think it's like hair, water, motion. I just love drawing that line work, and that's that very organic sort of. I'm very inspired by Art Nouveau. I was very fascinated by that when I was growing up. So I think that's sort of something that I'm noticing more is coming through in my work consistently, especially when you're kind of looking for that style to come through consistency, especially in commercial illustration. It's kind of like, okay, that's the one thing I'm most inclined to draw first. I am constantly looking at artwork, and I have a huge admiration for a lot of different artists. Growing up, I really liked, like I mentioned, Art Nouveau artists, so Gustav Klimt and Alphonse Mucha, and they're just that line work and that kind of graphic style, and obviously that then crosses over to that Japanese woodblock style that was coming around in Art Nouveau. So even those sort of oriental, so more recently Audrey Kawasaki was always really like just that beautiful line work once again. Most recently, there's a painter called Abby McCulloch, who's an Australian contemporary painter. I really loved her work when I was studying, and that's where I think I wanted to add in that sort of gestural paint splatter that's sort of abstract and it's not too planned, and then bring that in with something that is very planned and creating that contrast between that line work and then that unknown, unexpected factor. And I really I sort of found that, you know, when artists do things like that, it's kind of interesting rather than everything being so strict and organised. Just like, oh, I didn't see that coming. So. Not formally, but you know, my parents saw that I was very interested in art growing up, and luckily they put me in private classes from the age of 11. And my teacher Jan, who I had for those classes up until, like, she's still my friend now, you know, hugely influential to my practice. Just having the opportunity to work in a small group and have very self-directed projects. Like, she never kind of said, you'll have to do this, or we're all doing this, and it wasn't like a strict routine. It was like, what do you feel like doing? So that was, I think, for me, why I like doing so many different things, is because I was encouraged to do that in these classes. You know, one week we'd have clay, the next week we'd be smashing tiles from the op shop or plates from the op shop and making mosaics. You know, we'd do collaging. It was very much, she read a lot of books about practicing art and getting yourself out of those comfort zones, and it was always like a very subtle push towards trying something new. And so whilst that's not a formal, you know, after school kind of course, that has definitely shaped the way I approach my practice now. Once again, it's this kind of like, I hate being, and maybe why, you know, I am so exploring, I'm still trying to, you know, explore in lots of different ways of making art or illustrations, is because I don't like to be pigeonholed so much. You know, sometimes I feel like painting on a large scale. My Year 12 piece of work I did for my visual arts was like was this wide and almost as big as me canvas. My parents got that afterwards, they were really happy about that. But yeah, you know, having the opportunity to paint on a wall was really cool. But then, you know, also taking that to the other side of the scale and doing something, a nice pen drawing has the same sort of level of satisfaction. It just depends on how much time commitment you want to put to that piece of work and making it, or what's your idea behind it that, you know, you need to change the scale of it to be as big as a wall. I love the idea of mural art though, because I think, you know, have that opportunity to have an effect on people viewing it is a really cool thing about, you know, the street art in Melbourne. And something I've always been really inspired about myself. So scale just depends on the mood, maybe. I think, you know, part of progressing and tailoring your work is that you might have a favourite piece for a bit, but then you grow and your style gets hopefully better as you draw more. So something that may have really satisfied you at a time, it might not have that same impact 6 months down the track when you go and create something new. It's funny, it's the ones that, you know, the paintings that you sell that I think you maybe are a bit more attached, or you have that kind of nostalgia for, because you can't look at them anymore. I remember doing a painting maybe when I was about 17 or 18, and it was this really exaggerated, like, big long hands, big canvas, lots of colour, and I hadn't overplanned it or overthought it, and it just kind of happened quite naturally. And it got sold at an auction for a school thing, and the people who bought it were friends of friends, and I think my mum had an opportunity to go and see it in the house, and it was just really, had a lot of like emotion and power behind it. And I remember what I think it looked like, and I remember, you know, trying to aim to do something like that again, but it was kind of like I did it and then it was sold. It was, yeah, so maybe it's those pieces that you have a bit of nostalgia for. But yeah, I couldn't pinpoint one. And you just forget. Like when I went back home recently, Mum was like, oh, you better clear out go through all your art stuff, and I just spent, you know, a couple hours going through everything. Like, oh, I remember that now. I remember thinking that way. But once again, that doesn't really answer your question. I don't think it's as extreme as good or bad. I think it just needs to be kept in balance. I was just talking about it today with VisCom guys. You know, it is as much, I mean, I think the internet's a very external way of seeking inspiration, and it's cool to be able to see other people doing really well at what they're doing, but keeping in mind that that could be the very tip of the iceberg of their creative career. Going and seeing new things, like getting to an art exhibition, going to a talk, you know, getting along to something that is taking you out of your comfort zone a little bit, indulging in a workshop that, you know, you feel like just following that curiosity. So yeah, it's so easy to go, oh my gosh, there are so many people out there doing what I want to do. Where am I going to find my place in it? And I think the internet really amplifies that idea, which is great to see people doing what they love and being able to live a life that way, but also on the flip side it can be a little bit overwhelming and a little bit like you can go, oh, well, I'm not good enough, and you can't help but compare yourself. So I think it's just about keeping it in check. It's something that I'm only just starting to put some energy into now. So I just last week put the shop up on my website, which I've been planning to do all year. It's just, you know, oh, I'll do it, and I know I'm going to do it now. So Big Cartel is what I'm using at the moment, and it's really easy to navigate. But, you know, unless you're going to couple that in with maybe promoting on Instagram and think, okay, I've got the shop open, and engaging with your like potential customers. I think it's not just a linear way, like you couldn't, I don't know if you could just have a website, I think, and yeah, it's like, I think it's harder to know how much time to spend on organising the business side of things and marketing yourself, and then how much time do you spend making them work. So yeah, it's all balancing it. I'm a sort of step-by-step kind of person with art. I mean, usually I'm really big on the concepts, so if I'm going to start a piece of work, and especially if I want to make a commitment to a canvas, that I will usually do a lot of the brainstorming to find out what it is that I'm actually interested in communicating. I'll look at images, I'll look at, you know, do quick thumbnail sketches with compositions, but it's just sort of to get the idea and the inspiration brewing. Then what I would like to do, I get kind of intimidated by a white blank canvas, so as quickly as I can I'll try and make some marks, and then that kind of gives me the foundations or the structure to problem solve around. So the beautiful thing about painting is that you can just paint over it, and I like those little imperfections with painting, so you know, I almost applied that kind of idea of masking to painting before I was doing design and knew how to do it with Photoshop, so I love that idea of masking out certain sections. And yeah, that's kind of what I try and do. So even if it's just building up a colour or a mood or a theme within this, just the abstract side of it, and then getting in like some more realistic stuff with the painting. But yeah, I haven't really been indulging as much in the painting side of things recently. Yeah, so it's kind of, when I had my exhibition, I found that each of my paintings were very different. There wasn't that consistency because I hadn't spent enough time like nutting out that probably step-by-step process as much. I was doing pen stippling, line drawing, and then I just scanned it with computers downstairs at my desk and was trying to experiment with how to vectorize it.
Okay.
Trying to like see if I could, yeah, I was just kind of teaching myself and looking online and seeing what techniques might work for me and that thing. So that's what I'm working on, just experimenting.